Wired into technology transformation, this is the Digital Bulletin podcast.
Hello, listener, and welcome. This is episode 25 of the Digital Bulletin podcast. It's great to have you with us, and joining you and I on this voyage, we have our esteemed panel. First, let me introduce a familiar voice to pod regulars. It's Digital Bulletin Content Director James Henderson. James, how are you?
Good afternoon. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I've just realised we've reached a quarter of a century of episodes, so something to celebrate, right?
Yeah, and it's a quarter of a century of episodes, and I believe we're just about, as we're recording now, I believe when we're finished recording, the new issue of Tech for Good, I don't want to pull one of your plugs off you here, but one of the new issues of Tech for Good will be out, and I believe that'll be our 50th ever publication that we've put live, so two causes for celebration.
There we go. Some serious milestones being reached here. And to mark the special occasion, we have a very special guest, Victoria Neeson, CEO of Dreamtek. Hello, Victoria. How are you?
I'm very well, guys. Good morning from New York. It's a nice autumn day here today. It's lovely to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, it's an absolute pleasure. And the joy of podcasting in 2021 is that we can do these things sat in a virtual meeting room. So it's fantastic to have you all the way from across the pond. We're in the far less celebrated city of Norwich here in the UK. But
nothing wrong with Norwich.
Now, Victoria is here for a deep dive discussion about her career, the video industry, the role of video in our personal and professional lives, and to share her experiences as a female leader in tech. Later on, James and I will review our Western Union case study as well. But before all of that, here is your news roundup. Facebook has made headlines this month in many ways, as it usually does, of course, but one story related to what we talk about is its development of what it's calling egocentric artificial intelligence. This tech aims to understand and replicate first-hand human experiences as opposed to AIs, which commonly interpret things from a third-person perspective. So interesting development there from Facebook to keep an eye on. Elsewhere, we've seen the likes of Amazon and Google convene at the White House for a conference on the future of quantum computing. They joined representatives from the Office of Science and Technology Policy to discuss critical applications of this nascent technology. This month also saw IBM announce ambitious plans to skill 30,000 people by 2030. It says it will do so by creating 170 new academic and industry partnerships. We've also seen BT launch its own cybersecurity platform. The US become the world's largest Bitcoin mining center, and Pat Gelsinger dealt another Brexit blow to Britain by saying that Intel won't build any of its new chip factories over here. Now, as you know by now, listener, you can find the best reporting on those stories and many, many more via the Bulletin on digitalbulletin.com. But now the focus turns to our guest. And Victoria, thank you again. Thanks so much for joining us. And let's get straight into it. Maybe you can tell the listener a bit about your own career, maybe a bit of a potted history of your background.
Absolutely, yes. So I'm Victoria Neeson. I'm currently the CEO of Dreamtek. We're a global video production company. My career started in video conferencing, actually, back in the 90s. So video conferencing did exist in the corporate world, but it was very different to how it looks today. And I was working for Reuters, which was a huge news agency. Now I believe it's called Thomson Reuters. And at the time, Reuters was spending an obscene amount of money on travel. And the CEO of the company decided that he wanted to start looking at technology to see if he could reduce that travel cost. So one of Reuters' customers actually was SmithKline Beecham, and they had installed a video conferencing network and had a lot of success. So he decided he wanted to look at the same sort of success story. So we started the project, and we started looking at how we could implement video conferencing in some key hubs. So we started with just 4 main hubs in Europe, Australia, and the US, and it actually was very successful. We went out to tender. We selected a supplier called Picturetel, who was an old video conferencing company, brought in the systems, started introducing it to the employees, and within about 9 months, we actually had reduced the travel budget quite significantly. So it was a huge success story, and I ended up working at Reuters for 8 years, becoming the head of video conferencing and building out a global network.
What did that feel like at the time, Victoria? Was it a bit of a
It
sort of
was a
step
bit
into
of
the
a,
unknown?
it was a step into the unknown because, you know, I didn't have a huge amount of experience in tech, and it was my first position in tech. So it was very challenging, but also very rewarding. And we won a couple of competitions, and we won some awards about the innovative use of video conferencing. So yeah, it was a really, really positive experience for me, and also a great success story for Reuters, and the use of video. And we started to sort of explore. Now, we didn't want to sort of mandate people use video conferencing because people still wanted to travel. But we started to suggest that they actually just supplemented some of the travel with video. And we kind of sort of put a bit of a spin on it about it being much more of a collaborative way of working. And that, I think, was part of the success story. We weren't forcing people to use it. We were just saying, instead of traveling once a quarter or 3 times a quarter, just you try and use the technology, and that's how it grew.
And you said it was your first kind of steps into tech. It's amazing how careers take shape, isn't it? Because that is the route you ended up going
It
down.
is, because it wasn't an intentional thing for me.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't sort of, you know, leave college and decide that I was going to go into tech. It just happened that way, and I fell into it.
Yeah. Tell us about Dreamtek then. What does Dreamtek do? And obviously that relates very much to what you're talking about there.
Yes, so Dreamtek is, so now when we first began, so we're 20 years old, we first began in the music business. Actually, one of our founders was a musician, and he started the company building studios for musicians in the UK, then started getting into post-production, and was working with some sort of big musicians like Jamiroquai. We built out the first studio for Jamiroquai in the UK. We then started working as an Apple reseller. We were the first UK reseller of Apple in Europe, which was an exciting move for us. And then we got into post-production. So we're working with a lot of post-production houses in Soho, helping them with post-production workflows using Apple infrastructure. So that was the beginning. And then around about 11 years ago, I actually joined Dreamtek from my role working at Dresdner Bank. So when I left Reuters, I went to a bank, and I ended up running a multimedia division for the bank, which was a global investment bank. And I joined Dreamtek from there. I actually brought Dreamtek in as a vendor, because we had built our own studio in the UK, and we were starting to push out our own content. And we bought all of this wonderful Apple hardware, but we had no idea how to use it. So we brought Dreamtek in as a vendor to help navigate our way through the post-production process with the hardware that we had invested in. And that's how I got introduced to Dreamtek. So then I decided to leave the bank and actually join Dreamtek as an equity partner. And I brought sort of the corporate business to the company. So we started working with a few more corporate companies, and we now have a very different business. It's changed quite dramatically over the last 10 years, even more so, I'd say, over the last 4 to 5 years. So we're now a video production company, but we have 3 divisions within the business. Video production is a big part of what we do. And we have global production teams, you know, producers, directors, crews, working with our customers, filming video content, but also getting creative and producing creative video content. We have what we call our managed service business, or our talent business, which is where we actually provide creative and production talent to our customers. And that can be on a full-time basis, a part-time basis, or on a flex basis. And one of the biggest customers we have in that space is Facebook. So we actually have a considerable amount of production staff working at Facebook's offices, providing production services. And then the last division is what we call systems integration, but it's more of a technical function. And this is, I think, where we differ a little bit from other production companies, because we have technology is in our DNA, and have been from day one. So the technology division, we actually build our own products, and we have our own engineering teams, and that's been a big part of Dreamtek's success story and growth story over the years.
A really fascinating background there, Victoria, and a real insight into how a company can grow and how it sprouts in different directions. Again, the tech element there, and you're a global company as well. James, I'm going to bring you in here. We know video now is so pervasive, isn't it, in our personal lives and our professional lives. But listening to Victoria talk about her time at Reuters when they were taking those first steps into video conferencing, it sounds like another world, doesn't it?
Yeah, and in a sense, it is. If I can remember, we're using sort of computers 20 years ago, and the idea of even loading up an image, let alone a video, was painstaking. When you think about the connections you're working off, and the quantum leap we've seen over the last 15 or 20 years means, video is pervasive, and I feel like it's become sort of the default mode in terms of how we consume information or media, both in our private lives and our personal life, but also, in business as well. And we know as a business publisher and as a creative agency that video is often, one of, if not the most important component of what we do for our clients. Often when there's repeat business, that they come back and say, we really like this element of it. Can you create more video for us, maybe that we can use from a social standpoint, more bite-sized stuff? So we know how important it is, and you and I are both from sort of what you would class as traditionally editorial backgrounds. Our original skills were in the written word, but we've had to navigate that and pivot and learn new skills, because increasingly I don't think you can just rely on that. You have to have this skill set that includes multimedia skills and video and audio visual, and we know that increasingly graduates are coming into the workplace equipped with all of that as well. They've got this Swiss Army knife of different skills, and video is always one of the most important ones, right? So it's become, I think, the best way to elicit emotion in people, but also how to get across important information too. I think we know that over the last couple of years with the pandemic, the messaging has been hugely important into how we react to it and how we go about containing it. And I think we know that people are far more likely to watch a 2-minute information video compared with reading 500 or 600 words about it, for example. So yeah, I guess that in a nutshell is just agreeing with you. It has become pervasive. It has, if you like, become arguably the leading way that people want to communicate or be communicated to. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
And it's funny because obviously being in the video industry, we were waiting for this to happen, right? And there was a period of time where we were saying this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it took, to be fair, it took a long time. It didn't happen as quickly as we wanted it to. But then I think we started to see like the likes of YouTube. So we, Dreamtek were also involved with YouTube. We actually built the first YouTube creator space in London. And that's when it started to shift, as far as I'm concerned, because what you had, as you mentioned, James, this young generation who just, instinctively know how to use this technology. And as they're coming through the workplace, expect it. They expect to have this technology accessible to them. So going back to YouTube, building these creator spaces for these young kids that were creating video content in their bedrooms, and in their homes. YouTube built these spaces so that these creators could come in and get access to professional equipment, good lighting, build out the great sets, and produce much better quality video content, and in turn generate more revenue for YouTube. So, that's when I think we started to see the shift. And I think, we're just seeing so much being done now with video content and how it plays into, businesses' social media strategies. It's ubiquitous now. and it is prevalent. And it's the switch that that I wanted to happen many years ago. So I'm delighted that we're there now. It just took a bit of time.
I'm really interested, Victoria, to get your thoughts on the future and where we go. But first of all, I want you to put your video conferencing hat back on and think about what's happened over the last 18 months. Nobody could have predicted a pandemic where essentially video became the place where businesses existed solely for certainly a period of time. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we've just taken it one step further, and I think that, obviously in the workplace, it was prevalent. I now think it's prevalent with our parents and our grandparents, and many more people and generations have now got access to the technology because they've had to. And and I think in the workplace, we've obviously, for Dreamtek, we're a digital events company, and we have been for many years. So it actually wasn't new to us. But I think a lot of companies and a lot of businesses struggled with having to make this transition to digital, and very quickly. And that's, that was an advantage for us, because we had a lot of customers saying to us, help. We need you to help us create digital events. We need you to help us create virtual events, and we need you to help us get to that point, and quickly. And so for us as a business, we've grown incredibly quickly over the last 18 months, with our existing customers, but also with new customers. And we're working with, businesses. We're working with a group of hotels in London, just to give you an example, who've never had broadcast capability in their hotels, and are now saying, we've got to have this stuff because our clients are coming in, and they want that virtual element to their event. Yeah. So again, another huge shift. But my mother has never used video technology, and now she knows how to Zoom, and it's crazy. And that's the world that we're now living in, and I think it's going to continue, and long may it continue.
Yeah. How do you think things will develop then, Victoria? Like you mentioned, Dreamtek has a unit now where it's developing its own technology, looking to the future. Maybe if you can give us some insights into where you see this going, like what are the technological forces that are going to make video even more embedded kind of in our lives, do you think?
Well, it's obviously more accessible, and that's a good start. But I think in terms of the tech, I mean, we're adapting, we're building out products that will improve the quality of video capture from home. So we're obviously very used to building studios. We have a product called the Broadcast Pod, which is a bit like a photo booth, but it's a video booth. But the new product that we've just built is called the Broadcast Pod Mini, and it's built in a flight case, and it has built-in integrated Wi-Fi. So the concept is that we ship this off to a speaker's home, and at the moment we're dealing with kind of like C-level execs who want a better recording or capturing experience. So we're shipping it out to people's homes, and our technicians are remoting in. All they have to do, the speaker has to do, is plug it in, power it up. They don't have to connect it to their Wi-Fi. It has an integrated system that is all automatic. The technician dials in, up he pops on the screen. We've got a nice broadcast quality camera in there with a really nice light, and we start capturing the content and the video. And that, I think the managed service part of that is quite key, because I think the consumer or the exec doesn't necessarily want to have to learn how to run the whole system themselves. So we've designed the systems to be fully remotely controllable and accessible. But that we're starting to see an uptick in. And I do think that is where we're going to head. People want better quality. It needs to be accessible. They like the comfort of having an engineer or a technician run it for them. And that's personally the direction that we're taking the technical division in.
Really interesting listening to that, Victoria, because I don't want to bore the listeners with stories about our own company, but with as a company that produces video for clients, James, you'll kind of echo what what I'm about to say, that we've had that struggle with producing remote video over the last 18 months, and it's interesting to hear how a company like Dreamtek, right at the cutting edge of the industry, is taking steps to make that a more permanent thing.
Well, it has to be a better experience. Sorry to cut you off there,
No,
Ben,
no.
but not only do people want to produce better quality content, but they want a better experience, and that kind of plays into what we're doing with virtual events and how we're making the experience of running a virtual event just better. Because I think we're all suffering from Zoom fatigue. We're all kind of getting the same feeling about, oh God, another virtual event, another conference I could join remotely from home, and we need to do better. We need to create better experiences, because it's here to stay, as far as I'm concerned. Live events are going to start again, but there will be a hybrid or a virtual element to it.
Yeah. James, throwing it forward and maybe into a world that seems even more kind of sci-fi, but we've covered Facebook's metaverse idea on a pod very recently, where they're talking about how the living virtually and communicating in virtual spaces is going to become the norm in the future. Surely the future of video and layered on with augmented reality and virtual reality, this is the real kind of direction we're going in, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean the Facebook metaverse, I think I said in the last one, this amalgamation of everything that we do, our work lives, leisure, social, communication, all inside this virtual world. I sort of agree with what Victoria said there. I think there's the future, as I see it, or as I'd like to see it, maybe is a combination of both. I think that video and the way communication is now has pretty much saved really the global economy over the last 18 months. If you think about it, I spoke to a lot of business leaders in that time, and the question kept coming back: what if this had happened 25 years ago? Like, how on earth would we have gone about business? I'm sure we'd have found a way. And it's not to say that it was perfect, but more businesses would have gone to the wall. More people would have lost their jobs. More economies would have suffered if we didn't have these communications. So that's an absolute fact. But on the flip side of that, I do think the last 18 months has shown the Facebook metaverse, in my opinion, it's very, very intimate. It's every single part of your life is actually in your home with a VR headset on or an AR headset on, right? So I'd like to see this hybrid that Victoria spoke about. I think that's the way to go. But the metaverse thing is not going to go away. I think that they announced this week that they're going to be hiring 10,000 people just in the EU to sort of drive this forward. It's invested $50 million with non-profit groups to probably to ward off some of the regulators. Really, it's to in their words, build this metaverse responsibly. But the truth is, maybe it's not for me, right? They think that it'll probably take 10 to 15 years to truly take hold. So if you think about its target audience, really, it's probably a Gen Z audience, which has all its life known being connected to technology within its life. It's been born with that. It's how they've always communicated. So it's something that maybe I'm not 100% comfortable with, because I think that it encourages us to be completely insular, when actually the last 18 months has shown that there's room for both, right? We need the physical contact, but actually being able to communicate remotely and through these technologies is an absolutely fantastic asset, which has really come into its own. But as I said, maybe it's not for me. Maybe my kids or your kids, Ben, or whoever's they are, that is how they will be connected in their lives, and that's how they'll be comfortable doing it. So, but it's not going away. This is going to take some stopping, this Facebook metaverse. They are behind it 100%. I think Mark Zuckerberg said he sees Facebook pivoting from a social media company to a metaverse company. This isn't some side project. This is absolutely real and essential to Facebook's approach.
Yeah, I mean, and we know it's not a side project, James, because
Yeah.
obviously it's a big client of ours, and we've actually been working with them to sort of help them build out this is sort of the build up to this, and we've been placing some VR technicians and XR technicians in Facebook over the last year or so. So definitely knew something was coming, and knew that this was the direction they were heading in. But it's scary, and I think it's the same thing. You know, the same place we were in with video conferencing, waiting for it to take off, and I think it's going to take some time. But I think it's quite scary, and I also wonder how the enterprise and the corporate world are gonna keep up and adapt to this. You know, and I think that's going to be a big challenge for businesses.
Yeah, definitely. The word disruption is not going to go away either. I think there's going to be certainly a lot more of that. Victoria, I want to change tack a bit now. Let's talk about obviously you've grown and developed into leadership positions over the course of your career. I want you to tell us a bit about some of your experiences as a female leader in tech. Like what has that been like for you?
It's been interesting over the years. You know, working in a corporate investment bank in a tech role in the early 2000s was difficult. You know, and I definitely have been exposed to hostile situations. You know, and in terms of tech, you know, I mean, I don't look like your typical nerd. I don't act like a typical nerd. And so I think it was quite difficult for some people to you know, take me seriously, right? And what's been interesting is all my mentors at the time were all men, because there weren't other female women in tech, and certainly in the company that I was working for. But I think what I realised is that I needed to just be me and be authentic, and you know, and not be afraid to speak up. And I wasn't. You know, I had a lot of courage in what I was saying, a lot of courage in my convictions. You know, and it's not about being aggressive or being a pit bull. It was far from it, actually. You know, definitely that experience that I went through definitely shaped me, and helped me grow as a person and as a leader. And I think coming into Dreamtek and leading this company and building out this business, I've done it in a way where I've had knowledge of, you know, and been through the challenges. And that's why, you know, we have a lot of females in Dreamtek. We're a very diverse business, and we have, you know, we're a strong female leadership team. But I don't think I'd have been able to sort of get there unless I'd have gone through what I went through, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So it's very much about being authentic, and don't let, you know, self-doubt get in your way. And one of the things as well that I've done is build a strong network, and that's also very important. And that's a lot of advice I give to my, you know, the people that I mentor is, you know, make sure you build your network, because that's where you're going to learn and grow and experience new things.
Yeah. I know your experiences inspired you to create or be involved with the Power Women Initiative. Do you want to talk a bit about that and what that is?
Yes. So the Power Women Initiative, we started a few years ago, actually. We had our very first event in the UK. It must have been about 5 years ago now. We wanted to start a group that, you know, for our customers, but also for our own employees, that brought the females of the businesses together and just networked. And we brought in you know, some great speakers, and we were very fortunate to have a lot of support. And we started with a very small, intimate event, and then it grew and grew, and we ran more events. And I think the biggest event we ended up running was in New York. Facebook offered to host the event for us, because obviously we were working with them and strategic partners with them. They were very, very supportive and enthusiastic about Power Women and the initiative and what we were trying to do. And we ended up with, I think, over 300 people registered for the event. We had 150 people turn up for the event, and we had some incredible speakers, all who gave their time to come and talk about their experiences. And we had themes, and, you know, one of the themes was women in tech. but we had different themes for different events. And it's just generally been a really, really good experience for the female members of Dreamtek, you know, enabling them to build their networks, but also the communities that we've run these events in. And we've been able to open it up to the communities, and we've had a lot of success with it. So we want to continue. Obviously, we've been a little bit thwarted by the last 18 months not being able to have a physical event. We have run some virtual events. We brought in a couple of executive coaches to come and coach some of our members on a virtual event, which was again very, you know, incredibly successful. But we do hope to get back to in-person events at some point.
And Victoria, what's your assessment on how much progress we have made in this area, like as someone who's still very much in the industry, and especially in tech, which gets a lot of negative headlines, rightly so. Where do you think we're at right now today compared to sort of where we have been?
And we've made a huge amount of progress, you know, and from when I first started to where we are now, it's you know, significant progress, but there's definitely still a way to go. You know, and I think we're seeing these networking groups pop up, you know, Women in Code, and, you know, and all of those things, and we're seeing it, I think we're seeing it to sort of start at the right level, you know, so in schools and in colleges, you know, kids, you know, young girls are learning about technology, and you know, they're being given the opportunity to go into the tech industry, and that's amazing. You know, and I think that's something that's where it needs to start, and that's where the support needs to start, and the encouragement. And I think we're starting to see that, but there still is a lot of bias, you know, and we need to move away from that. We need to get away from that. But I do think it's heading in the right direction. Yeah.
Well, lots more work to be done, and you know, we in our position are trying to highlight it as much as we can, James. Right, and you know, we want to certainly speak to organisations and people like you who are very much doing stuff on the ground to drive change. Well, Victoria, thank you so much. It's been great having you on. James, you got anything else you want to say? Anything you want to throw at Victoria while we've got her?
No, just thanks so much for coming on and sort of sharing your experiences, and you know, how you managed to blaze a trail. It's been really, really interesting, and it would be, you know, great to cover one of your events when they become in person again, or even online, certainly. So just thanks so much for your time and your insights. It's been really great.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, guys.
What does the rest of your day look like, Victoria?
Busy.
Yeah. Well, we'll let you crack on with far more important work than this. But thank you so much, listener. Don't go away. James and I will be back for more after this.
Find us as Digital Bulletin on LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram, and at Digi_Bulletin on Twitter.
For this month's case study review, James and I are going to revisit our October front cover story with Western Union. James had the opportunity to speak to Harveer Singh, Chief Data Architect and Global Head of Engineering, to get the inside track on what has been, I think we can say, a fairly busy couple of years for him and the financial services multinational. We're going to hear from Harveer in a minute, but James, maybe first you can give us a bit of an overview of the scale of change undertaken by Western Union here. I mean, because this is a company and a bank that's really as old as money itself, isn't
it? Yeah, it is. It's definitely one of what you call the sort of legacy businesses, organisations within financial services. It's known worldwide. I think everywhere I've ever been, and I'm not saying I've been to every country, but I'm pretty well travelled. And I think I'm pretty sure that there's been a Western Union at every location that I've ever been in. And I think, millions of people use it every year. It's got hundreds of thousands of employees. And as a company that's not one of these, the new entrants to the financial market, it has all of those legacy issues to deal with. And that's particularly true of its technologies. It's, as with most companies like this, always run its systems, its technologies on premises, so in big data centers and big data warehouses. And over the last couple of years, it's looked at that and the issues that brings, building on top of old technologies. And we know about the sort of interoperability issues that has, it decided that it was going to take on this cloud migration program, which is what we spoke to Javier about. I think at the end of the main video, he talks about what's interesting about Western Union is its scale, and that's where its opportunity is. And it's very much in one sense, it's quite similar to a lot of the tech transformation stories that were written, in that it's a cloud migration from on-prem to a public cloud, but it's that scale and size of Western Union which is really at its core, and why it's a different story, if you like.
Yeah, it was a big enough project to begin with, but then you consider the effect of COVID-19. Now, here's our first clip with Javier talking about what impact the pandemic had on the transformation.
COVID came and it just accelerated our journey. We wanted to do this in 3 years, and we were forced to do it in 18 months. So we started our journey last year, just pre-COVID, when we started to migrate off our on-prem environment into cloud. And what we realized that in order to keep up with the demand for digital, which is what COVID pushed us into, we had to do it faster. We had to make sure that we can accelerate, and we have to scale. Our digital capacity, which was on the on-prem environment, which was supposed to not go out of capacity until 2022, was going out of capacity in 2020 itself, right? So we had to really, really accelerate this journey to migrate our digital capacity onto the cloud.
Sounds like a pretty urgent situation Javier faced there. Now, James, you spoke to him. He has been a key player in this, hasn't he? And it seems like he was given a lot of autonomy to sort of decide strategically, and certainly in some areas, the direction, and to build the teams the way he wanted to as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a pressing priority. As he said, it was they thought they were okay until 2022 in terms of the capacity of their data centers, and one of the many effects of the pandemic was that these digital services were lent on more and more, and they realised that it was probably would have been quite an interesting wanting to be a fly on the wall within Western Union. That, okay, we're going to hit this capacity by 2020. So they the tech transformation program was cut from a 3-year program to an 18-month program. I think that Javier, he came across to me as this very much a self-start leader, and he's got a really varied background at companies like EY and Deloitte and IBM. I think Accenture's on there as well. So he's got a lot of expertise in business transformation and tech management and collaboration and teams. So he was brought in off the back of that, that shifting time frame that he spoke about, and was really trusted, I guess, to accelerate that. There was a recognition within Western Union of this need to accelerate the transformation, and I think they recognised that experience he had to build complementary teams that he speaks about in the article, that he brought in, teams from outside the organisation, often from consultancy roles. He brought in industry experts, and there was a lot of skill within Western Union, as you'd expect. And he talks about building an army to basically deliver this transformation. And as with a lot of the stories that we've told, especially in a time frame like this, there was a lot of elements of sort of agile working in there as well. And I don't think you can really go about a program like this without doing that anymore. So I think that he was entrusted to do it because they probably recognised that he was the man they thought could come in and do it. And it feels like he was given a lot of autonomy to go out there and sort of like a superstar football manager, implement his blueprint for success. And I think it's fair to say that he did a fairly decent job at it.
Yeah, it always amazes me with these transformation stories, especially one like this where things are happening so quickly because of an outside force like the pandemic. How they manage to keep things going day to day, like business continuity, must be a huge challenge. I think Javier spoke about that, didn't he, in the article?
Yeah, he said so. Obviously, that whilst you're implementing this sort of cloud platform or cloud environment, you're going to be running on there. But at the same time, you have to keep your on-prem environment going and your backups of on-prem going as well. So you've got this almost sort of 3-tier system, and it's fair to say that's very, very expensive at a company of the scale of Western Union. And there was this need to deliver both speed and quality, and that's a pretty difficult conundrum, isn't it? So he sort of stressed that he had the support from the higher ups, but he also did admit there were certain times he lay awake at night and thought, these costs are spiraling. We're on a really tight schedule here, and he did say that, you know, sometimes he did think, okay, there's going to be an interesting meeting with our CFO tomorrow, for example. But I think obviously the proof's in the pudding, and they've managed to deliver it, and they've got this goal that they speak about of getting all their core systems to the cloud by the end of the year. But no, I completely agree. I'm not sure I'd quite want the pressure of keeping all those systems and budgets in check at once, but I don't think that's exclusive to Western Union. As you said, the pandemic has acted as this driver, and companies have had to get their skates on.
Yeah. Now, another interesting element to this story is how Western Union is dealing with the rise of cryptocurrencies and the wider decentralization of the industry. Here is Javier talking about Western Union's involvement with the World Economic Forum on this subject.
Western Union is part of the World Economic Forum and is a very, very close participant when it comes to helping decision making and policy making across large leaders because of our presence and how we influence the local economies across the world. As part of this initiative, we have a subgroup, for example, which is called Central Bank Digital Currency. Now, the central bank digital currency is different than the digital assets that people are talking about. This is not cryptocurrency. It's not something that is being mined. It is more stable, something that will be used to perform instant settlements across the board and provide liquidity to different banks through local reserve banks. So I was very fortunate enough to sit on the same table with some large leaders who represent how we want to go forward in taking part in, let's say, a digital dollar, for example.
James, I always think it's really interesting to get insights from a 170-year-old company on something that is fundamentally changing their industry, like blockchain, like digital currencies. Given what Javier said there in the work with the WEF, that Western Union are clearly embracing the potential of blockchain in financial services, aren't they? Both through that, and I think there was some stuff in there about stopping fraud as well using that technology.
Yeah, I think that increasingly companies like Western Union are they're going to have to embrace them, because if they don't, they'll find themselves overtaken by these newer, more agile companies that have been born in the digital age and so are more prepared to take on those technologies and believe in them. So he spoke about, he was really open about how he sort of sees the future of financial services and payments. And as you said, Western Union is a partner of the World Economic Forum, so it has a really important and influential voice in how payment systems of the future look, how that ecosystem looks, and how to make payments more, a lot easier and stable. Because we take it for granted here that we can just ping each other money, right? But a lot of time in the developing world, it's not that easy. There isn't the infrastructure there, and that still needs to be built in a way. And so when it talks about sort of central bank currencies and how he sees that idea of the digital dollar being ripe, especially within sort of Western Union's systems and its vendors and partners, it was really interesting, like you say, to get that perspective from somebody who's central to what you would call a more traditional financial services player, but one that is definitely thinking, is a lot more forward thinking than definitely would have been 5 years ago, I think. And like he also spoke about, the blockchain as this thing they refer to in financial services, KYC, which is know your customer, which is about when someone's making a lot of the time cross-border payments, just ensuring that it's a legitimate payment and the person that's going to isn't, part of, something that's illegal or nefarious or anything like that. And because a lot of the frustration is a lot of the time when you're having to work at getting that information off people so you can work out your customer, a lot of the times that's the same process going again and again. With blockchain, obviously, we know that it can be held in a decentralized location, and all information can be held there, and so that process doesn't have to keep you, because if there's any suggestion that a payment has been made for illegal means, that can hold out for days, weeks, and a lot of the time it isn't. But you know, these checks will automatically, something will happen and it will be held up. So there's definitely a recognition as well that blockchain, you know, can act as a sort of facilitator for quicker cross-border payments, and really sort of trying to eradicate that fraudulent element of it as well.
Great stuff, James. Well, that's all we have time for this month, folks. And if you want to read the article on Western Union's technology transformation and indeed watch some of the videos on the topic, then you can find everything you need over on digitalbulletin.com. On our sister platform, Tech for Good, we've just launched Series 3 of the Tech for Good podcast, where I speak to Fred Werner about the UN's AI for Good program. That's well worth a listen. And as James mentioned earlier, we have a brand new issue of the Tech for Good magazine for you to tuck into as well. The final act for me is to thank James. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Really enjoyed it today.
And a big thanks to you too, listener. We'll be back to do it all again in a month's time. Goodbye.
That was the Digital Bulletin podcast. Listen and subscribe to a range of podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. Plug in for news, features and case studies on the very latest in enterprise technology and digital transformation.